Meeting has been rescheduled from November 10th, 2020. This meeting will be held electronically as per Section 19I of the town's procedural bylaw number 6228-19 as amended due to COVID-19 situation. Could I get an approval of the agenda, please? Councillor Thompson.
Second.
Mayor Marcus. Any discussions, additions? All those in favor?
Aye.
That's carried. Thank you. Any declarations of pecuniary interest and general natures thereof? Mayor Marcus?
No, sorry, that my computer was just making noises. I apologize.
Seeing none, could I get a motion to receive the Financial Advisory Committee meeting minutes of October 13th, 2020?
So moved.
Mayor Marcus, Councillor Thompson, all those in favor?
Aye.
That's carried. Any delegations? I don't see any. Item 6.1, memorandum from Manager, Recreation, Community Services, Pricing Policy and Ability to Pay, FAC update. Lisa?
Thank you. So I'm going to share my screen here to shoot. Didn't come up the way I was hoping it would come up. Just give me a minute here. I do have this. Here it is. Can everybody see that? It's the same I believe you've got this in your package.
Yes.
So earlier this year, we engaged consultants from Monteith Brown to go over our pricing policy and to do an ability to pay review, or what's otherwise known as a subsidy review for residents and participants who are unable to pay the full cost of a program. The last pricing policy was done in 2009, and it's become outdated. It was difficult for staff to use, and it didn't include all of the information that we really needed to have a robust pricing policy. So we engaged our consultants. We asked them to update the pricing policy to draft an ability to pay review and to do a deep dive into our financials to help us understand the true costs of our programs and to come up with some worksheets that staff could use in their daily work when they were delivering or when they're designing new programs and pricing new programs and working on our operating budgets and that type of thing. So the updated draft policies and procedures should help us for approximately the next 7 to 10 years. We obviously will have to make some tweaks over that time, but we don't anticipate another deep dive like this. It shouldn't be needed for a minimum 7 years. So they've done a lot of work to set us up for future. And as I mentioned, the project also included the development of an ability to pay or access policy. And it outlines a draft policy just to ensure that residents can participate in town programs and that the cost of a program isn't a barrier and that there's some kind of assistance there for them. And I mean, these types of policies and procedures are important. Our goal is to engage as many people as possible in the community in terms of having them participate in recreation programs and services. We all know the benefits to society of having those types of programs available. And it also allows us to, be transparent and consistent when we're setting our fees and have some rationale and to understand our true costs. So the progress to date, we're actually almost finished this project. We recruited a reference committee, and the reference committee included residents. A majority of them were already sitting on various committees of council, and we met with them several times over the past few months to go over some of these draft policies and concepts to see if they made sense, if they felt that it was appropriate for our community and that type of thing. So we got really good feedback from that group of people over a couple of meetings. The consultants did a review of policies and procedures in surrounding municipalities, along with some benchmarking in terms of what are other municipalities charging for similar services, because that does factor into into this project. Obviously, we did some focus groups, and we did one with some of our clients who have used our current fee assistance program, and we asked them what they would like to see in the new policy and how it could best serve them, and just how they would like to access it. And we got really excellent feedback there. One thing to note was they were very they wanted to make sure that equity was sort of addressed in the policy, just to be sure that everyone had equal access to programs, and that there's no barriers because of cost. So that was a key issue for them. We also, as I noted, have developed 2 draft policies. So the one is on the actual program pricing. The second is on the ability to pay or the subsidy, and then some background documents and a calculation worksheet. I think you have most of those as part of your package. I don't believe you have the calculation worksheet. And then the community survey actually has closed since we prepared this presentation, but we're just going through the results of that. It was of that survey that we put that on our community engagement portal, Bang the Table, and just asked for feedback on, again, the general concepts of the policies and procedures, and did people think that they were fair, and did they make sense? So we're just wading through that information and those responses right now. So the background document included the project's purpose and content, the role in delivering recreation and community services. I mean, we know we can't be all things to all people. And actually, I'll just note here, I'm sure this group probably knows this, but this document or this project only applies to the programs and services that the town directly delivers. So we don't get into how minor hockey might calculate their fees or how soccer might calculate their fees. We don't, it's not our jurisdiction. I have no idea how they do their fees. So this is applicable just to the programs and services that the town directly delivers. The rationale for doing a project like this, like I mentioned, it's about transparency and fairness and understanding our costs so that we're managing our operating budgets in a responsible way. Again, we did reviews of local policies and practices, a review of the demographic, social, economic trends in Aurora, and that rates and fees benchmarking. So again, we looked at, what is Newmarket charging for swim lessons, and what is Stouffville charging for fitness memberships, that type of thing. So the draft pricing policy, sort of the key concepts in that policy are that there needs to be obviously transparency in local government by having a methodology in terms of setting fees. We need to be able to defend, why we set fees at certain levels, and be able to defend what the inputs are and that type of thing. And that we need to understand our cost to delivering them. And then we need to understand reasonable rates of cost recovery. There are very few programs and services that we're offering in recreation that have a 100% cost recovery, especially when you take in all of the costs in terms of facility related, full-time staff related, and I'll talk about that in a minute. But there are categories in terms of cost recovery. And so we did categorize the programs and service types. So typically, you are looking at a 0 to 25% cost recovery, 25 to 50, 50 to 75, and then above 75. And that's typical in terms of these kinds of policies. You're looking, so all of your programs and services fall sort of within those categories. And as they get to be more specialized, more exclusive, the cost recovery level goes up. But when you're talking about entry-level programming or things like a life skill, so swimming lessons are generally considered to be an important life skill. So they're typically highly subsidized by the municipality. And the cost recovery, the true cost recovery on those to the participant is only about 25%. But as I said, it's priced that way because it's generally accepted that swimming is a life skill, and it's important for people to have the opportunity to take lessons. Youth services are typically highly subsidized. Again, it's important that youth are learning life skills, are having opportunities to volunteer and participate, and places to hang out like the Loft. The Loft is one of our free services. Again, youth services are seen as a highly subsidized program because of the population that they serve and the benefits that having youth programs brings to society in general. The thought is, it keeps youth, I hate to use the phrase, but like off the streets and that type of thing. So those are sort of some of the low fee, no fee, and we're fortunate in Aurora. We have lots of no fee programs. We have a majority of our festivals and events are no fee. We have our trail system, our parks, like I said, our Loft. We have often programs that are sponsored, swims and skates and that type of thing that are become no fee because we've been able to get sponsors, that type of thing. And then you move into your introductory level where the cost recovery is about 25 to 50%. And those are, again, just sort of introductory to any type of program. It can be science, dance, cooking, those types of programs. And then you get into a little bit of a more exclusive program, a value added, things like specialized training, fitness memberships, the fitness classes that might be a little more not mainstream or require specialized equipment. And then you get into sort of what we call the premium commercial category, and that would be private swim lessons or rentals, exclusive use of spaces, that type of thing. The cost recovery on those is expected to be around 75 to 100%. So that's basically the categories we're looking at in the draft policy around recovery. So the next policy is the access policy or the ability to pay. And it's a policy, like I said, that allows for individuals that can't pay the cost of a program, even at the subsidized rate that we're offering at. So as I said, swim lessons are offered at a fee that really only recoups 25% of our costs. But for some people, that's still a barrier. They still can't afford to pay that fee. So this policy addresses those individuals who cannot pay those fees. So what we have in this policy is a suggested amount. It would be a pool of money for each individual that is equal to what the average person has spent with us over the course of a year in programs and services. And we deem that to be, through our research and looking in our registration systems, about $200 to $250 a year. So for a child, that might get you a week of summer camp, a swim lesson, and maybe some other kind of seasonal arts and crafts program or something like that. That we would have to allocate some funds in the operating budget to subsidize that participation. So don't anticipate, this is not going to hit the budget in 2021. This has not been part of the 2021 budget. We're not expecting this to be approved till early in the new year by council anyway. And we've got a bit of work to do over 2021 to get our systems and policies in place if council does approve this. And we've also got in the policy measures and targets for participation amongst low income. So once we have a proper policy in place, we want to be able to promote that. And we want to be able to say to people, hey, you can participate in our programs and services. We have funding, we have a program available if you cannot afford the cost of the program. And obviously there's a means test that will go along with that. So and so we're looking at LICO, we're looking at LIM. We have not determined the means test yet or what the cutoff will be. Most municipalities in the region of York are using LIM, the low income measure, as the benchmark for people that might be eligible for this type of program. And we do work with other funding agencies. And in fact, we look at other funding agencies first before we have people access our programs. So we have lots of funding through Jumpstart. They're a little bit specialized though, because they do only ages 6 to 12, and they're only for sport programs. But there are other agencies out there, certainly the region. We do a lot of work with the region, and we have a lot of clients through the region. So we're working with agencies, and we look at all of the other funding opportunities first before we dip into ours. And then again, sort of just as a philosophical thing, there's that range of no fee, low fee programs and services for all. So the costing calculation guide is a very exciting piece for me as a staff person. What happened? So the consultants took a deep dive into our financials. And they looked at facility operating costs. They looked at administrative costs related to these programs, and they were able to come up with a guideline for us, and actually an interactive sort of worksheet where when we are developing a new program, we can plug in what we know. So what the costs that we know. So we know what our part-time instructor cost might be. We know what our equipment cost might be. And then they have calculated as a percentage of that a facility cost. So they've done it per facility, because it obviously is different. A pool is, you know, different operating costs than a gymnasium and that type of thing. And they've also calculated an administration cost to be applied to that. So that includes all the full-time staff, including registration staff, includes even registration processing fees through the online registration system, and marketing costs, like all of that's been calculated in. And again, there's a percentage that we can apply when we're developing and trying to cost out a new program. So this is going to be a really valuable guide for staff, because we're starting new programs all the time. And we didn't have a good handle on some of those facility costs. We didn't really know what to apply when we were developing new programs and that type of thing. So this is something that's going to be very useful to staff almost on a daily basis. And we'll have to tweak it a little bit over the years as costs go up and that type of thing. But we're very happy to have this information. And again, it just helps us know the true cost of what our programs are. So swim lessons, for instance, a half-hour swim lesson actually comes out to like $70 when you run it through this guide. But because we subsidize swim lessons to the rate of 75%, you know, you get it down to what we're charging now. And then some of the other programs, like I said, are a little bit higher as we get specialized. So I have a little example there about swim lessons and how we cost it and calculate it, and so just to sort of show you how it works. So are that we are preparing a report for general government early in the new year. We will be looking for approval on the two policies, the pricing policy and the ability to pay. I don't expect, as I said, no budget impact in 2021. The only budget impact, there won't be a budget impact as a result of the pricing policy, because we think what's going to happen is as we run our existing programs through that worksheet, some of them are going to be high and some of them are going to be low. And as we work through that, I feel it's going to balance out. I really am not anticipating any major impacts. We probably have some programs that are underpriced and will need to be brought up. But that'll need to be done on an incremental basis, depending on what the gap is between what we're charging now and where it should be. Because I wouldn't want to go and double the price of a program because we underpriced it over 1 year. We would want to phase that in. The budget impact will be as it relates to the ability to pay. And we want to have a fund that we can draw from for those people who need subsidy for programs. And as I noted, any large increases will be have to be implemented over time. It won't go over well with the public if we take a program and that we realize was underpriced and we double it. And there's other things that factor into pricing a program. It's not just the results of that worksheet. We do look at what are surrounding municipalities, what is the market in general offering for this program? What are our neighboring municipalities charging? Those types of things do factor into the cost. It's not just so black and white as putting it through the worksheet and then deciding the rate of subsidy. There's going to be cases where we're going to need to massage the price even after that. That's the first step, is putting it through the worksheet and understanding our true costs. So like I said, as staff, we're very excited to have that worksheet now. It's really going to help guide us as we're developing new programs and even running our existing programs through it. So that's it for me. I'm happy to take questions at this point.
Great, thank you very much. Could I just get the motion on the floor? Motion to receive the presentation, as well as that the memorandum regarding community services pricing policy and ability to pay FAC update be received, and that the FAC committee comments regarding the community service pricing policy and ability to pay project be received and referred to staff for consideration and further action as appropriate. Councillor Thompson, Mayor Marakis, any comments or questions?
I guess I'll go first. Through you to Lisa. I guess one of the comments I had last time this was before us was just trying to understand what the impact of this policy would be in terms of the changes. And I'm still in that same spot where we're being asked to, adopt a new policy. And in theory, I'm supportive of that idea of the goals towards cost recovery and certainly the affordability and the access piece. But I still don't really understand what the impact of doing so will be. And some of the comments last time was to be able to try and identify what, if any, of those programs that we currently have based on this new structure would, significantly increase or decrease what those huge variances were. And, I noted when your presentation, you said you don't anticipate any major changes, but I guess, which is good, but that still doesn't say that there aren't going to be any. And, I guess that's where I'm still a little hesitant in moving forward with the change in policy without really knowing what the impact will be, right? It's like saying, let's, change the development charges without really knowing what the impact will be out in the community or with the residents. I just would have a better comfort level with the policy if I knew, what that variance would be, and also, I guess, how widespread it is. I think the other thing we were looking for last time was a greater understanding of the subsidy levels that we currently have with programs. And, while we've put them in the various buckets here of either 0 to 25 and so forth, I don't know how much of a change that is from what our current structures are. Again, so is it, on par? Is it similar? Is it a slight change? Is it a significant change? That was some of the information I guess I'm looking for to have comfort moving forward with it, because, the concept and the ideology behind it is sound in terms of cost recovery and having this, but I just don't know what the impact of us approving this is, and I'd like to know that.
Okay.
Lisa?
So you're right. We don't know yet because we just haven't had time to run all of our existing programs through the worksheet yet. So if council wants sort of more detail on that, we can certainly do that work. We just received the worksheet a couple weeks ago, and we've done a handful of programs, and they ran out. They're pretty much where they should be. But that's a handful out of 1,000, right? So we can certainly continue to run our programs through that worksheet and understand what the impact would be. We would need some time to do that, and it would delay when we bring the policies to council. But as I said, we're not anticipating implementing fully in 2021 anyway. We just want to take the time to run our programs through the model, and certainly any new programs that we're developing, which we are, well, these days every day because of COVID, we will now use this tool from the get-go. So that's the good thing, is from this point forward, we will use this tool from the get-go, and we know that we'll always be within the ballpark of where we should be. It's the existing programs that we do need to take a closer look at, but the ones that we've done are in the ballpark. They don't require major adjustments, but it is only a handful out of thousands. We just haven't had the time to run them all through yet. So if council wants more detail, we can certainly do that. It just means we would be coming a little bit later. We need a couple months to do that work.
Again, through you to Ms. Forth. Lisa, I mean, certainly that's comforting to hear. I certainly don't speak for council. I just speak for myself, so I don't know how everybody else feels about it. I don't think for myself it's necessary to run this through the grinder for 1,000 programs, but it would be good to have I guess a good portion of them just to get that kind of sense, or at least the ones that we feel may be most likely to see the bigger variations. The other piece really is, you look at the policy itself and how we're determining things, and cost recovery is one of the main drivers, and certainly affordability is, but then it's also market rates. Mm-hmm. So we want to make sure we don't price ourselves out of the market. And, I guess that's the other thing to understand for myself is, how many of these programs, while we're striving for certain target levels, really we're not going to reach, because whatever the market dictates is what we have to go with. And, that would be additional information, which would be, I guess good to know, because, if we're putting forward this policy, but at the end of the day, none of those rates are really going to truly be put into place because the market just won't bear it. Well, then I don't know, we need to, I guess, revisit the policy then, right? So,
so
those are my comments.
Thank you. We have done, so there has been situations in the past where we have tried to develop a new program, and we've tried to calculate the costs as best we know them. We obviously know them a lot better now. And it came out really high. And as a sort of a staff team, and we sort of looked at the market, and we determined that we can't offer this program. It's too high. There'll be no take up. Nobody will pay that kind of money to take that program. So that definitely factors in. And we've been making those decisions as we've been going along. We'll have a truer picture now of what our real costs were, where we did that kind of thing in the past, we were estimating. So that definitely, it's happening now. And we're, on a case-by-case basis, we're looking at, we can't offer this program. Maybe somebody else can, and they'll be able to sell it at that fee. But we've had to make that decision in the past. Yeah, for sure.
Thank you. Mayor Marcus, you have any? Okay, I just have two, one along the lines of what Councillor Thompson was mentioning, in terms of it would be helpful to see some type of a matrix between what we currently have and if we move into this new policy, and what, if any, the effects would be financially from a budget perspective. That's something that I would like to see. And just the second one, in terms of the two committees that were established, the focus group and the other, from the report, it appears that to a certain degree they were impacted by COVID, and I'm just wondering whether we're going to be catching up, or is that kind of phase over and we'll just take whatever we got, or how are we dealing with that?
So thank you. Yeah, it is over, so to speak. However, I will say for the focus group specifically, we got a lot of valuable information. We felt that we got the information that we needed to inform these policies. The survey, it's hard to say whether more people would have responded. We actually did, the survey was scheduled to go in April, and we delayed it because of the nature of the survey was asking about, fees and how much would you be willing to pay. And in April, when COVID was really coming down hard and we were facing, our first wave, so we delayed it until this fall, and when we launched it, things were a little bit better than they are now. So, but at this point, it was not our intention to go back out. For the most part, we felt we got valuable feedback and we got the information we needed to inform these policies.
Okay, thank you. Any other comments or questions? Although not explicit in the motion, I mean, I guess it's understood that it will come to council, I guess, first quarter of 2021. Is that the idea?
Yes.
Okay. All those in favor? That's carried. Thank you.
Thank you. Good night.
Good night. 6.2, memorandum from Manager, Financial Management, Re-Operation Services Department Budget Materials. If I can get a motion on the floor that the memorandum regarding the Operational Services Department budget materials be received, and that the comments and suggestions of the review of the detailed financial information, the Operation Services budget be received and referred to staff for consideration and actions as appropriate. Mayor Marakis, Councillor Thompson, any comments or questions?
Mr. Downey is here. I don't know if he wants to speak to it first.
Mr. Downey, welcome.
Thank you. Good evening. I'm always happy to talk about the budget. So it's my pleasure to talk about the operational services budget. Just to give you an overview, we are looking at a surplus this year, approximately $212,000. Certainly the lion's share of that surplus has to do with the fact that we did not bring on summer students this year in parks operations. About a little over 150,000 of that 212 is related to just that one budget line alone. Certainly some of the work that staff have been doing over the number of years is trying to right size this budget. I think we're all familiar with the operating budget fluctuates quite a bit. So we have been working hard trying to get some right-sized numbers and deal a little bit better with those fluctuations. I am happy to say that over the last 4 years, the budget hasn't increased substantially, 2.7% or $275,000 over the last 4 years since 2017. So it hasn't been the need to put more money, but I think more importantly, putting money in the right spot. And I believe that we have done much of that hard work. In addition to that, we do have or continue to identify some critical areas that we need to deal with from a budget perspective, and primarily garbage. So for instance, garbage itself or waste, but the garbage line has increased 36% over the last 4 years. Or almost $192,000 since 2017. That's a significant increase. And so that's one of the reasons staff brought forward the 3-bag program, something to respond to what we felt was a substantial increase in the budget. And we continue to react to some of those major budget fluctuations within operations. So I'm happy to answer specific questions on any specific line. I know that committee has been provided some information, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Downey. Any questions for Mr. Downey?
I'll go first. Through you to Mr. Downey. Al, one of the ones that jumped out at me is the landscape fees. When I look at 2020 approved budget and then your 2020 forecast to year end and the revenue lines. So we didn't really budget anything for landscape fees, and yet, you know, we're showing 342,000. Can you just speak to that?
Sure, and it's actually one I have circled. You can see it here. So
you knew it. You must have known it was coming.
Well, we need to do better, and so actually, the treasurer and I have been working on this, and with their staff as well, because it's an impossible number to predict, and because you really don't know what that year is going to bring. At the end of the day, it zeroes out because the more money that we bring in, the more money we put into reserves. So first of all, I have to anticipate how much revenue I'm bringing in, and then I need to anticipate how much we're putting into reserves. And basically, it's an in and out number. So it doesn't have a dramatic budget impact because the more money we make into revenues, the more money we put into reserves. Conversely, if we make less, then we put in. So we put a nominal fee in the expense because we simply can't predict it, knowing that it will zero out when we get into the contributions to reserve. I'm not quite sure. As I say, we are working on a process that deals a little bit better with this. It's the same issue that planning has with their planning fees, and so it's not isolated or unique to operations. It certainly is with any revenue, so we are, as I say, working on trying to figure out a better way of reporting that.
And I hear you that it can fluctuate year over year, but I guess, you know, I look at 2017 actuals and it's 160,000, 2018 actuals 130,000. Don't know what happened in 2019 because it's zero, but I guess, you know, if you know it's not going to be $1,000, why budget $1,000? To me, that's not the right nominal number. I mean, if typically it's 100,000 or more, you know, I still think we should strive to be somewhat accurate. And I hear you when you say, well, it's just an in and out, but you know, then it stands out, and you know, then you're here explaining it over and over and over, right? So take a 5-year trend line, do whatever, but I just think that we should have a more reasonable forecast than $1,000 based on just what I'm seeing. You know the history better than I am.
Through you, Mr. Chair, I don't argue with you, and those are the conversations that we're having. I mean, if you take a look at the contributions to reserve, we had budgeted 113,000 and put in 481. So, I mean, if you take a look at it, wow, we're doing really great in that number. So, or we're at least going in the right direction. But it is a challenge, and I think it needs to be a little bit better how we're doing the reporting. And 5-year average seems reasonable, but like I say, I would like to be able to do something consistent across the corporation with regards to that.
Sorry, Mr. Downey, again, with regards to operating materials, 4015, you have the budget of 643,000. The forecast a year end is 769. Can you speak to, you know, again, you can see that it bounces up year over year, but what was it that cost us an extra $150,000 in expenses?
I'm sorry, are you still talking about parks operations?
I'm on the overall summary, second page.
Yep.
4015.
Yep. So
Operating materials.
Yep, that has a lot to do with winter maintenance. So if we have a lot of events, we're using more salt, and if we're not having, then we use less. So those fluctuations are difficult to predict, which is one of the reasons we have a winter maintenance reserve in order to deal with those. But that's primarily attributed to the fact that we had more events last year, and so we had more salt use.
Okay. Those are the ones that jumped out at me. Thank you.
Mr. Mayor, do you have any? Just the only other one for me in terms of winter maintenance. Was there any large changes in part-time that have to do with winter maintenance?
So,
I just noticed. Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, no, not a problem. So with regards to winter maintenance, no, not dramatically. You see a $43,000 change. We had, however, identified that we are using less part-time staff with our winter maintenance now that council has approved a more full-time complement to deal with winter maintenance. So we had actually reduced our budget in 2020 from the forecasted numbers that we've seen in the past. So once again, that's some of our right sizing exercise. We haven't got it completely right yet, but we're getting better.
So is that why? And I think I'm getting the right line. 2002 salaries part-time. 2019, we budgeted 642, 2020, 525. Is that because of more full-time?
So if we're dealing with winter maintenance part-time, we budgeted $22,413.
So, okay, I'm not looking at that then. I'm looking at the overall summary of part-time.
Okay, so now I got to go back to that sheet. So you're talking with 525, 304.
Yeah.
Yes. So you really need to drill down into individual departmental or division areas, and you will see the most dramatic change in part-time is in parks operations, where we had budgeted for part-time salary $468,000, which is without a doubt the lion's share of that part-time, and we expended or forecasting $315,000 this year. So as I said, the lion's share or the majority of the savings that we're going to be seeing or surplus that we're going to be seeing in the department is attributed to that line alone. As you can see, it's $150,000 swing.
That's in parks operation part-time salaries?
Correct. So if you take a look at part-time salaries.
What page are we on? What page is that?
Okay, so so with regards to the overall summary, you've identified part-time salaries as $525,000. If you then go to the parks operation line by line,
Yeah.
you will see that the part-time salaries is $468,000. Easily the lion's share of all the part-time salaries for the entire department.
Oh, I see that.
Right. And we have reduced that by $150,000 this year because we didn't bring any students. And so that's why I said at the beginning, yes, we're looking at a surplus, but most of that surplus is on the back of the fact that we didn't hire those part-time students.
Okay. Any other comments or questions?
Through you to Mr. Downey. Al, we keep talking about right sizing whenever departments come to us. Are we near the end of right sizing?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, I don't think quite yet. There's two areas that we continue to have concerns about, and one is waste management, and then the other is winter maintenance. I have to admit the reserve helps us with regards to any of those fluctuations, but we are looking at better ways in order to contract out those services that provides us with a little bit more certainty. And I had a conversation with a contractor 2 days ago, actually, with regards to trying to put in some more certainty. So I think we're pretty well done, but winter maintenance and waste management continues to be our two primary areas where you're going to see the majority of the fluctuations.
Thank you. And on waste management, again, our costs are related to tonnage, right?
For garbage, they are. For recycling, they're not. So if you go to the waste management, let me get my sheet here.
And really, I'm focusing on the garbage because, I noticed in the Auroran today, big ad, starting January 1st, that we're going to be enforcing the 3-bag limit.
Yep.
And I'm actually curious whether that's going to have an impact, notably or not, on our tonnage.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, I'm hoping it does. And just to give you an idea, with recycling, which is not weight-based, but just the number of things that we pick up, the only thing that really affects that is growth. So the more houses we bring on, the more recycling we have to bring in. And you'll notice that number doesn't change dramatically. I mean, the amount of money we spent in 2017 on that was about $1.4 million. We are now forecasting $1.6 million. So not dramatic increase over 4 years on recycling. However, garbage at the same time has gone up $191,000. Has gone from $534,000 or $535,000 to a forecasted $726,000. That's why we brought forward, we need to do something about controlling these fluctuations, these increases. It's a 36% increase. We need to do better. And so that's one of the reasons that we brought forward what we felt was an appropriate measure with regards to the 3-bag limit. Now, if it's successful, we should see a, I want to use the dramatic, but we should see a decrease in those tonnages. And if we do, then we will conversely see a decrease in that budget line, and get a little bit closer to where we have traditionally been, which is somewhere in the $600,000 or the $650,000 range.
So it's interesting that you note that really it's only garbage is by the tonnage. So if we were to dramatically reduce our garbage and everybody recycles twice as much, it would be a significant savings because it doesn't really offset itself, right?
Well, and you're right. That's exactly right. Except one of our issues is, you know, and I'm talking a little bit in the future because it does cause, because as you know, I have tried to look in the future with regards to our budgets. If we get into the transition, are people going to, depending on how well the transition works, are people going to be putting more recycling into their garbage, and we're going to be paying a higher garbage bill because people are reducing their recycling because of a variety of reasons. So we're kind of hoping that it's exactly the opposite. We're kind of hoping that they're going to be able to open up the blue box to a whole lot more than they have presently. And so we're going to get a lot of that stuff that used to go into the garbage stream into the recycling stream, and we'll see a reduction in the budget. Now that would be a double a good thing for us. And first of all, we're reducing the amount of bags, and secondly, we're reducing the amount of stuff that goes into waste. So that's where we're kind of hoping and working towards. But that's only a prediction at this point. Until we actually know how it works, we don't know.
Thanks.
Just on that point, Mr. Downey, I'm trying to identify, see on page 79, contracts and collection contracts under waste management. Where is the recycling line?
Okay, so I'm with you on confusion, and so we have talked about this with the treasurer, and so we're actually going to change the wording. So if you see 5059, which is contracts,
Yeah,
that's garbage, solid waste. If you take a look at 5062 collection contracts,
yeah.
that's recycling. And we're actually going to call it that from now on. It's a little bit easier to understand.
So recycling is costing us almost double garbage.
Exactly. And that's one of the reasons why it's such a high profile, that if the province takes over recycling, that could be a huge windfall for municipalities. And that's part of that discussion. As I say, the issue with that is the province has identified certain areas where they're willing to pick up recycling and certain areas they're not. So we need to decide as a municipality, what's our service level for recycling. But it could have a dramatic decrease in our budget or in the overall budget to the tune of $1.5 million. That's a substantial amount of money.
And sorry, you may have explained it, but I didn't get the what is the matrix that moves the needle for recycling versus tonnage for garbage in terms of our costs?
So first of all, part of the reason that it costs twice as much to pick up recycling is because we pick it up twice as often. So now we're in a cycle where we pick it up once a week, and we pick up garbage twice a week, or sorry, every other week. I apologize. And so one of the ways of reducing that, and certainly that's one of the discussions we're having with the province, is what is that service level? Are we going to reduce the amount of times they pick it up to once a week? And if they do, recycling generally doesn't fall within the parameters of tonnage. And so they may be looking at a reduced service level to once every other week, just to save some collection costs.
Okay. Any other comments? Seeing none, all those in favor? Opposed? That's carried.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Dan. 6.3 memorandum from Project Management Office, Town Major Capital Projects Update, that the memorandum regarding town major capital projects update be received for information. Could I get a motion? Councillor Thompson, Mayor Marakis, any comments? Seeing none, all in favor? That's carried. 6.4 memorandum from manager, that the memorandum regarding internal audit multi-year plan be received for information. Care to move that? Councillor Thompson, Mayor Marakis, any comments? Questions?
Just one, I'd like to know how to pronounce the deputy treasurer's last name.
I foresaw that coming. And if I was not as nice as I am, I would ask you to try it first. But
I don't think I can.
I could probably say it, but
Kotochoki.
Thank you very much.
No problem.
any other comments? All those in favor? That's carried. 6.5, that the memorandum regarding the Department of Finance budget materials be received and that the detailed financial information for the Department of Finance be received and deferred for the discussion and detailed review at the next meeting of the Finance Advisory Committee. Want to care to move that? Councillor Thompson, Mayor Marakis, any comments?
Save them for next week. Or next.
Those in favor? It's carried. Any new business?
Just out of curiosity, what is the date of our next meeting? Does anybody know?
The next meeting would be December 8th.
Thank you.
Okay, motion to adjourn. Mayor Marakis, Councillor Thompson, all in favor?